I started living that living that lie that the society is saying that as a man, I got to conquer. I got to conquer women. And I started sleeping with so many in my life, and to the point where I hated that too. I hated that part of my body, but just living that lie. And so protecting myself, I would hurt you before you would hurt me. And the goals that I'm going to do the best I could and do all that I could and playing hockey, started at an early age. I remember one time with my grandmother, because we were living in a small community, and that church was shut down, so we went to the neighboring church, and it was a much bigger church, but it was really an all-white church. And we were walking in. I was walking with my grandmother. After service, we were walking outside, and in the foyer, there was about 4 or 5 couples sitting out there. And as we were walking past, they were saying, loud enough for us to hear, "What are those people doing here? They got their own church. They don't belong here." And as I was walking out of the church, I just saw the tears coming out of my grandmother's face. And I made a vow right there. If this is Christianity, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. And so I walked away from the church. And I got into Native religion. I got into Native politics because I want to fight for my people, fight for our rights. I went right up to the provincial, right national, got to the point where we fought and we got Bill C-31 passed so that our non-status would become Indian again. All that did was put a stamp on our forehead that the government put on there, just a number. And so even those accomplishments were empty. And so I didn't know what to do. But during that time, in that promiscuous life, a young lady came up to me one time that I was dating at the time, said, "I'm pregnant." And it just, what? But because of there was some morals and values still built in from my grandmother's and grandfather's teaching, that I said, okay, well, I guess we'll have to get married. So we got married young, 19 and 17, and planned the next child. 2 years later, we had a daughter. I had a son and then a daughter. And I thought, okay, I'm a millionaire now. I got a wife, a beautiful daughter, and a beautiful son. But there was still something missing in my life. There was still something that was just missing. And as I was fighting for the rights of my people, little did I know the kid's mother and I were slowly separating. And then one day, in one of our anniversaries, she came up to me and said, "I'm leaving you." And the more I tried to get a hold of her and try to show her, let's stay together, the more I did, she pushed me away. Until one Christmas, the family invited us for a dinner. And they said, I thought, hey, maybe this is it. So we went to the dinner, and it was just a drunken party. The more I drank, the more I pursued her. The more I pursued her, the more she pushed me away. Until at one moment, she turned and told me, "Get the beep out of my life." And I looked at her and I said, you want me out of your life? I'll make it permanent. I was going to drive my truck into the Stalaco River. And I was heading there. There was an old bridge that was a perfect ramp that was taken out. And I was heading for that to drive my truck and kill myself. So I was driving for that ramp. Just before I got there, I heard this voice, what about your kids? And so I just shook it off, and I kept going, and I said, I heard it again. I was just yards from that ramp. What about your kids? And I just hit the brakes, and I slid sideways, and I still can see in the moonlight the rocks hitting the water. And I just screamed out to God. Funny how we scream out to God in our very lowest moment. But at that moment, I called out to him, help me. I didn't know what to do. So I picked up my kids, went back home. I raised my kids by myself for 17 years. Raised them. But during that time, at that beginning, I devoted my life to them. 6 months later, they said, Dad, why don't you go out? You don't have to be with us all the time. Kind of like, get lost, Dad. So I went out, and after work, I would have a beer with my buddies. Pretty soon it was Friday, Saturday. Pretty soon it's all weekend. I fell back into it until one day I got back home and just saw the pain in my children's face. Remembering that pain in my own heart. And so I said, I can't do this anymore. God, help me. But little did I know that I had an aunt and my sister were Christians at the time. And they kept saying, come to family camp, come to Rockness. There's family camp out there. I said, I don't need that. They kept telling me, come on, come on. And in my own thinking, all right, I'll go just to shut you up. And I went to Rockness. There was a family camp there. There's something different about that. The people there accepted me for who I was. My children were accepted, and they were running around, and I didn't have to worry for a while. And there was a band, and many of you might know them, the Sunrise Band, that was playing there. Randy Jackson, Howard Jolly. They were singing these songs, and in that, my heart was going, and Randy would come up and speak. Kind of ironic. As Randy was speaking, it was like, Daren, George, you need to stop. You need to do this. And it was just directly at me, and I was just like, he spoke to me. The Lord was speaking right through him. And then they came up and they sang a song, and it was an altar call. And I knew that I knew that I knew I had to come forward. And I gave to my life to Jesus Christ that day. And I never turned back since.